life as his parents moved on. Where we grew up was not exactly on the right side of the tracks, but we didn't care or even notice. We had a happy youth in a relatively modest housing. A house of your own. Don't forget the material trappings of this social capital, a place we can call home. Home is what one philosopher calls the materialization of identity. Okay, our houses were nothing to look at, but at least we could pop next door to talk to other youthful gunslingers. Is it any wonder that whatever sliver of self remains quickly becomes deracinated as our surroundings become ever more impersonal, more clinical, more detached from social capital that gives context and into which we express ourselves? My point, it's not really possible to separate out personhood, to neatly separate out technical issues of legal capacity from these broader social capital considerations. To me, the benefit of the paradigm shift in the convention is that it opens up the narrow, synchronic inquiry about capacity into much more diachronic inquiry into deprivations that have led to this point, and a further inquiry into how pillars for a development of self can be laid down to optimize the chances for self-realization. The way the convention is framed allows us to see these cumulative disadvantages and to connect that with the seemingly narrow technical issue like legal capacity. Thus viewed, issues like embeddedness in community and participation in life are folded back into the traditionally narrow legal inquiry about legal capacity. Incidentally, that's why I think Article 12 has to be read alongside Article 19 on the right to live independently, as well as Article 29 on the right to participation. What then of cognition, of rationality, as the sine qua non in enabling the masterless man to conquer the universe? Cognitive psychologists have, as you might expect, long worked in the field of decision-making. And surprise, surprise, they've come up with some conclusions that are strikingly at odds with the essentially political-driven notion about the centrality of cognition. To make a very long story short, they question the very integrity of the divide between cognition and emotion. They depict decision-making as very complex, very intuitive, and wait for it very reliant on experience, as well as the innumerable cues and supports of others. Experience. If you're denied experience, then how can your decision-making capacities evolve? Cues and support? I don't know about you, but there are very, very, very few decisions I make totally on my own as a masterless man. My wife is my constant companion in more ways than one. I self-consciously factor in how she would decide before deciding. I often seek her support and guidance, and I play mental games, playing out how she would react as well as others to particular decisions. Hey, the most important decision, whom to marry, is certainly not rational, but very worthwhile. So what is it with the rational masterless man? Indeed, some of the most important battlefield decisions of my boyhood idol, Captain Kirk, could not be characterized as rational at all. So now, let's regroup. Where are we? Can we bring the issues out of the ghetto of disability to the people at large? How can we connect with everyone? Remember I said the convention is not, to me at least, primarily about disability. It's about a theory of justice as applied to disability, which hopefully everyone can subscribe to. The myth system of our political order pulls in one direction with its commitment to rationality. And the operation system to which we all observe around us points in exactly the other direction. Can we bring the two closer? What difference would it make for all of us, and not just for persons with disabilities, to build on this reality? And what difference would it make in terms of the role of law, adopting a legal realist perspective? Well, can we leave some of the myths aside for realities? In reality, we do not treat cognition as the essence of personhood. Indeed, we studiously avoid essentialism. We all have intuitions about personhood, but they are not exhausted by the emphasis placed by moral philosophers, really political philosophers, on cognition. In my view, most ordinary people would be shocked to learn that contemporary political theory, especially contractarian political theory, cannot accommodate persons with intellectual disabilities. Tapping into that deeper well of popular justice needs to be done to make the paradigm shift appear natural. Another reality is we all depend for our sense of self on each other. The mind evolves as a relational concept. Those others often pose a threat as well as an opportunity, and that dialectic is essential to personal growth and absolutely unavoidable. Now, some people, as I say, worry a lot about supported decision-making models, that they might too easily morph into substitute decision-making models. But wait a minute, this is a universal phenomenon. It's not confined to intellectual disability. The difference may be one of degree, but it's not one of kind. When I imbibe the dinner table talk about how Party X is horrible and Party Y represents nirvana, and I vote accordingly, am I not being undermined? Why is my vote not taken away? Doesn't it have something to do with dignity, with the natural impulse in any society to respect the inviolability of the self and its preference? Doesn't it have something to do with a healthy fear if we begin unraveling our respect for others, as expressed, for example, through the ballot box? There's no end to that logic. Well, there is. You could see it in Germany in the 1940s. And so we need to tap into this deeper ethic of always treating others as aims in of themselves, even when we know their electoral preferences are wholly irrational, something that I think has been conspicuous by its absence in the disability field. Another reality, we all assume social capital to provide context, incentivize connectedness, provide the innumerable supports, mainly informal, without which we could not function as human beings. Now, isn't this the big point about the paradigm shift in the convention? Social processes were not open to persons with disabilities in the past. The message of unbelonging was internalized, with the result that persons with disabilities were hidden away as if out of shame, thus creating spoiled identity. By the way, Article 12 calls for support to enable persons with disabilities to exercise legal capacity, which includes, but to my mind stretches beyond supported decision-making. I see supported decision-making as something that happens as a decision is being made. I see support for legal capacity as encompassing some of the essential building blocks to enable legal capacity to evolve. And so it makes little sense to me to view Article 12 in complete isolation. It necessarily involves putting in place the essential ingredients for enabling capacity to grow. This requires a place of one's own, stamped with one's own personality, even if that's something as simple as a treasured photograph. It's this materialization of identity in place that links Article 12 with Article 19. It isn't just that expanding legal capacity allows one to make choices about where to live and with whom, it's that having this choice itself helps to augment legal capacity. Similarly bound up with full implementation of Article 12 is Article 29 on the right to participate. Another reality, in reality, cognition tends to be a minor element in helping us plot a course through life and make decisions. Strange it is that we can see this and yet avoid its implications. We allow ordinary people to vote on the fate of the nation, even when we know that most people do not vote rationally. Why can't we build a more realistic picture of ordinary decision-making and then build a legal capacity structure to reflect that rather than the myth of rationality? So what if we built a system of law and policy not on the myth system but on the operation system? What would it mean if it became a commitment to the development of the ingredients of personhood rather than just respecting the outputs of personhood? What might follow? Might the functional approach, for example, become the basis of an inquiry not about when substitute decision-making is needed, but on what kinds of supports are necessary for the person? I'll quickly flag forward because I know I'm running out of time. What role of law, if we were to build it on the basis of actual reality instead of myth? Well, let me make an observation in passing.